If God doesn't exist, then about 95% of all human beings who have ever lived in the history of the world, in all times, places, cultures, and religions, have guided their lives by the biggest illusion in the world.
Welcome back. In this video, I have Dr. Peter Kreeft, who is the professor of philosophy at Boston College, and he's giving a lecture entitled 7 Reasons Why You Should Become a Catholic, 7 Reasons Why You Should Become a Christian. Now, I've extracted a clip, and I'm starting at reason number 5, which he cites as the hope of heaven. He provides a beautiful typology where he shows that the church is analogous to Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark is like that thing taking us somewhere, namely heaven, and it's helping us to be saved from the flood of this world. He then shifts and talks about the empirical and demonstrable proof that 95% of people in world history believed in God. He then makes you ponder the insanity of our atheistic age. He offers us an either-or question. Are the saints of world history insane? Or perhaps maybe we are insane, this modern atheistic man that has been generated. He then gets into C.S. Lewis's famous analysis of Jesus, and again offers an either-or proposition. Either Jesus is Lord or he is lunatic. You have to decide. And then, in an interesting twist of events, in a way I've never heard it said before, Dr. Peter Kreeft applies this to the church. He says, basically in effect, and this is my paraphrase, the church is either the most insidious institution ever invented, or it is the true apostolic and infallible church established by Christ. Which one is it? You have to choose. There are so many interesting things within this video. I just ask that you stick around and watch as much of it as you can. Stick around to hear one of the most amazing philosophers and his points of view, his arguments for Christianity. I know you won't be disappointed. All right, that's all I have. Please be sure to like and subscribe and enjoy the video.
All right, I've gone through 5 reasons: faith, hope, charity, facts of history, saints, hope of heaven. Be a Catholic because it's Noah's Ark, and Noah's Ark is going to the land of life, and you're in the land of death. Be a Catholic because that's the God-ordained way to get to heaven. That's what the church is for. It's an ark. It's going somewhere. It's his way of saving you from a flood and preserving you for a new world. And as I said before, heaven is something far better than we can dream. C.S. Lewis puts it in these memorable words: all your life, an unattainable ecstasy has hovered just beyond the grasp of your consciousness. The day is coming when you will wake to find beyond all hope that you have it, or else that it was within your grasp and you have lost it forever. What could be more important than that? Nothing. Why are we so bland, so passionless? There is something about which to have infinite passion, namely infinity. And if that's not true, it's the world's biggest delusion. It can't be just a nice ideal. It can't be just a myth. It can't just be a helpful dream. It's either true or it isn't. And this brings me to my 7th reason, which is, I think, the most logical. Let's start with the existence of God. If God doesn't exist, then about 95% of all human beings who have ever lived in the history of the world, in all times, places, cultures, and religions, have guided their lives by the biggest illusion in the world. Maybe some of you are old enough to remember the old Jimmy Stewart movie, Harvey. Jimmy Stewart is a nice, reasonable, apparently rational, middle-aged man who has one very strange fixation. He believes in Harvey, who is a 13-foot-high invisible rabbit that only Jimmy Stewart can see. Nobody else can see him. And he's the most important person in Jimmy's life. Well, Jimmy is nice and he's good and whatnot, but he's insane. There is no Harvey. He's just a delayed adolescent who's playing with an invisible friend. Now, if God doesn't exist, then 95% of the human beings in the history of the world have been insane as Jimmy Stewart. At least one atheist explicitly admits that, Sigmund Freud. In his most philosophical book, Civilization and Its Discontents, he labels religion insanity. Not many people will go that far, but Freud explains why. Well, the insane don't know that they're insane. They think people outside the insane asylum are insane. But if there's no God, then all believers in any kind of God, any kind of superhuman being, are insane. So you got to be a snob to be an atheist. Oops. That's a short act of contrition. Then you come to Jesus, who claims to be God incarnate. Now, that too is an either or. That's either true or it's not true. If it's true, you have to worship him. And if it's not true, what do you have to do? Well, if you're a good Jew, you have to crucify him. Actually, only the Romans crucified. The Jews used stoning. But when Jesus, in the 8th chapter of John's Gospel, explicitly said to them, I'm God, he didn't use those two words, but he said something even more shocking. Truly, truly, I say to you, which is the rabbinical formula for take this as seriously as possible. It's not a myth. Don't negotiate it. Don't be subtle about it. Don't do a little dance around it. Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was Yahweh. Those words had not been heard since God spoke them to Moses from the burning bush. That was God's own name, so holy that no Jew ever dared to pronounce it. Well, if he isn't who he says he is the world's worst blasphemer and liar. And if anybody deserved to be killed, it was him. People read that passage and they say, well, I like Jews. You're supposed to. Jesus is a Jew. Therefore, I'm not going to say nasty things about the Jews. So they just sort of misunderstood him. No, they didn't. They understood him perfectly clearly, and they were being very faithful to Mosaic law, which demanded execution for blasphemy. If Jesus is not Lord, then he's either a liar or a lunatic, one or the other. The one thing he can't possibly be is the thing that all non-Christians think he is, namely a good man. A man who claims to be God and demands your worship is not a good man. He's a bad man. He's either intellectually bad, insane, or he's morally bad, a wicked liar. The same kind of argument applies to the Catholic Church. Only the Catholic Church claims to be the one infallible, divinely authorized, visible institution on earth. No Protestant church claims that. So if that's not true, then of all the Christian churches, the Catholic Church is the most wicked and blasphemous and arrogant. But of course, if it is true, then everybody ought to join it. It's Noah's Ark. And then finally, what the church gives you is, of course, truth and goodness, the saints, but also beauty, especially in the liturgy, in the Mass, in the sacraments, the real presence of Christ. The one Catholic doctrine that moved me most powerfully to become a Catholic, against my will, I read the Church Fathers in order to convince myself that they were Protestant. You know, that's an honest mistake, and God uses honest mistakes, and you know the rest of the story. When I read all the Christian writers before the Reformation, I found that not a one of them denied the real presence of Christ in the sacraments, especially the Eucharist. Not a one of them. Even the enemies of Christianity said, well, of course, that's what the church teaches, and that's ridiculous, that's cannibalism, that's horrible, that's blasphemous. Nobody said it's only a symbol. The first one who ever said that was Berenger of Tours in the 10th century. He was immediately labeled a heretic. He repented. He was reconciled to the church. He didn't found a movement. Later, you get movements, especially the Waldensians and Albigensians in the 13th century. Oh, by the way, what's the difference between a Dominican and a Jesuit? Dominicans were founded by St. Dominic in the 12th century to combat the heresy of Albigensianism. Jesuits were founded by Ignatius of Loyola in the 16th century to combat the heresy of Protestantism. Now tell me, please, how many Albigensians have you met lately? Jesuit joke. Jesuits have a great sense of humor. I love them. Okay, here's this idea that you can meet God incarnate personally, body and blood, soul and divinity, in the Eucharist. That looks like bread and wine. It's not bread and wine. That's Christ's body. That's Christ's blood. After consecration, after transubstantiation. Now, if that's not true, that's the stupidest and wickedest idolatry in history. These stupid Catholics are bowing down to bread and worshiping wine, thinking it's Almighty God. Was the Holy Spirit asleep for 1,500 years? How could he have let all Christians in the world be subject to that ridiculous heresy? Oh, yeah, it's another either or, just like God, just like Christ, just like the church. Well, if he's really present there, then that's like the closest you can get to the marriage bed in dating. Now, I'm not going to ask the question about sexual morality here. I'm just using the same sexual image that the saints use for the spiritual marriage. If Jesus Christ is fully present in the Eucharist, then when you receive the Eucharist, that's the closest you can possibly get to him. That's the most perfect union with Christ that you can possibly get. That's the closest you can get to heaven on earth. And Protestants say, well, no, it's only a holy symbol. Well, here's Jesus knocking at your door. And if you say, well, I don't believe that's you, I just believe that's a holy symbol, you're missing out on something astonishing. By the way, I think this is the main reason Catholics come home. Catholics who have been baptized and then left the church are the second largest religious group in America, next to Catholics who are still in the church. And we got to get them home. America is our primary mission field. And I think the Eucharist is the primary thing that's going to draw them home. It's a magnet. It's a light in the window. It's the fire in the fireplace. The church is a fireplace, and Christ is the fire. And I've heard of countless Catholics who have come home for that reason. They may have difficulties with the church's theology. They may have difficulty with the church's morality. They may have difficulty with the church's clergy, but he's there. That's my home. That's the fire. How can I be anywhere else? I also know a number of Protestants who became Catholic because a Catholic suggested, well, look, here, you don't believe the church is what it claims to be, and you don't believe the Eucharist is really Christ, but you're not sure, right? All right, so I challenge you. Go into a Catholic church sometime, alone, when nobody's watching you, and you're not worried about what people think, and go to the first pew and see if that little red light is there, and Catholics believe that means that Christ is really present there. And you don't know whether that's true or not. You think it's not, but you're not sure. All right, so pray. You're a Christian, but you're not a Catholic. Oh, pray. Okay, pray to Christ. Say, you're my Lord. Whatever you say is true. Wherever you lead, I want to follow. And I don't think that's you, but maybe I'm wrong because I'm not God. At least I know that much. So if that's you, draw me. And if that's not you, let me get the hell out of here. It's got to be one or the other. Your will be done. And if you pray that, you'll become a Catholic. Jesus promises it. Seek and you shall find. All who seek, find. The only ones who don't find are the ones who don't seek.